Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are checking out This Is the End. This is a donation reward for Sweet Venom, so thanks as always. So This Is the End is a movie that came out in 2013, and what I know about it is that there's a bunch of celebrities playing themselves during the end of the world. Like it's I believe an apocalyptic end of the world movie, but you have like all these celebrities and actors and everything, but they're playing fictionalized versions of themselves. And I know there's specifically one scene I know of where Michael Cera slaps Rihanna's ass, and she slaps the absolute shit out of him. And I know of this because I saw like a brief clip of this interview where he acknowledged that no, she actually hit him that hard. She actually sent him flying with that slap. Like it was real, and he actually was the one who requested that that be the case to make it come across as more real. I don't know any other context behind it. I don't know context behind the movie otherwise at all. I don't even know everyone who's in it. I think Seth Rogen's in this. So it's probably that kind of like maybe stoner comedy movie. Probably just that general kind of humor. I don't know. We'll see. But I have no idea what I'm going to feel about this film. So I see we could just get right into it and hope for the best. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I looked it up. Apparently, the short story that this is based on, Jay and Seth versus the Apocalypse, which was from 2007, was a short film that was directed and written and all by Jason Stone, but also Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg also worked on it. So it wasn't like just someone else's property that they adapted. It was a thing that was their entire thing from the start. So yeah. This movie is not really what I really expected. Like, I knew that this was, again, about the end of the world. I knew it was like starring all these actors as fictionalized, exaggerated versions of themselves and everything. I knew all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't know exactly how it was going to go. I didn't know that most of the movie was going to take place in a single setting, being James Franco's house. In this universe, I guess you could say, of it. I don't know what his actual house looks like, of course, but I didn't know like exactly what the humor was going to be. I assumed there's going to be a lot of the stoner and sexual comedy, which there was. I didn't know like what kind of apocalypse it was going to be at all. Honestly, biblical apocalypse was not on my list of thoughts. I was thinking more of like, the movie 2012, something like that. Earthquakes, tsunamis, that kind of shit. Instead, it was just a literal biblical apocalypse. So, I'll just come out and say this is probably the best stoner film I've ever seen. Like, I've talked about before, like when I watched Harold and Kumar, when I watched those movies, that I don't watch a lot of stoner films because it's not usually my type of humor. And a lot of the stoner films that I have seen or even seen clips from have not really interested me a lot. a lot of them rely on just the crude, quote unquote, adult humor that just is basically stupid and immature for the sake of stupid, immature humor. I've never been a huge fan of that, and there is definitely a lot of that in here. But this movie, I feel, saves itself completely by mixing that stuff with self-deprecating referential humor, with the actual apocalyptic shit going on, and almost kind of a genuine feel of intensity, fear, confusion, and just all of that stuff coming from the fact that this is an apocalyptic situation. Everyone's going to be scared. They're going to be freaking out. They're going to be thinking irrationally, doing terrible things, trying to survive. And a lot of that came through really well. As I said in the reaction, the actual like design of the demons, again, I don't know if it was CG or if it was like a combination of CG and practical or whatnot. I don't know how that was all done, but they looked amazing. Even if they were just complete CG, they looked amazing. I don't know why the giant Satan guy had to have like a big ass hanging dick though. It's like a little unnecessary, but whatever. Of course, the one that came in and ended up possessing Jonah Hill also had a very pronounced dick, and possessed him by raping him, as we could tell. Kind of going into that, the kind of humor that I typically don't like in these movies, but there's also like one or two unanswered things in there, like what happened to Emma Watson. Like, we never actually get clarification with that. But all in all, when they really focused on a lot of the apocalyptic shit, it was like the best parts of this film, easily. I even really like the fact that they at first just didn't even show the monsters, the demons. They started off just letting us hear the noises, the growls and everything, seeing the effects of them, like the one guy that was trying to get in and poking his head through and having his head sliced off by one of them. It's like just seeing that happen, it builds up tension, it builds up fear, it builds up excitement to see what actually caused that. And it builds it up. I think the first demon we actually see is the one that possesses Jonah. And then we see a couple others outside, and then the giant Satan one. So that's pretty interesting, that we don't even see a lot of them. We see more of the effects of everything going on. My favorite demon design was probably the quadrupedal one, the one that attacked Jay and Craig when they were trying to gather food from the other house. That was probably my favorite of the designs. It was bestial and crazy, and I loved it. It just really impressed me with its design and concept, and the execution of it visually. I liked the actors in this too, again, being very self-deprecating, very self-referential. Because that's a lot of what this movie comes down to. It's literally these actors making fun of themselves. It's literally these actors mostly centered around, Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel. Baruchel. I always mess up his name. I can never get his name right. But it's mostly centered around them. They are the two main characters, which is why they're the ones the movie started and ended with. It centers around them and the others, like, just kind of like making a movie like, oh, we're just gonna shoot the shit and just really like shit on ourselves. Um, like they obviously outside of just playing exaggerated personas of themselves, they're all like the worst of the worst. Like I said before, Seth Rogen was probably the nicest, the actual nicest of the group we had and we were following. But it's like you see some of this, and some of it's just like obviously entirely fictionalized, like Michael Cera. Like I've heard like from other actors and actresses who have talked about him, and just people who have met him, he's like just a sweetheart. He's as nice and cute as you would think. He's just the sweetest dude. But in here, he's an absolute shitbag. He's insanely terrible. And it's funny because it's like it's literally the opposite of what you'd expect and what apparently he actually is like. Um, James Franco is probably the most on the nose, if we're being honest. But honestly, when this came out in 2013, a lot of people probably didn't know that, unfortunately. James Franco's terrible actions, I'll leave it at that, have come to light more in the recent years. And again, as I mentioned, like even Seth Rogen cut off ties with him, and they were like best buds and all. Jonah Hill was like the passive aggressive type of guy. Like he was like terrible, but was like pretending to be nice about it and everything. Danny McBride was just a fucking terrible shithead in this. He was like the worst. Just an absolute asshat. Craig Robinson was nicer than some of the others, but he was a little passive aggressive at times too. I really wish we followed Emma Watson a little more, because it's like she was just kind of a badass, and like I at least wish we knew what happened to her, you know? But there's a lot of other like guests in here too. Like Channing Tatum is just Channing Tatum plays roles like that a lot. I feel like wasn't he? Didn't he have a role like that in Bullet Train? Where he was just like that kind of like weirdo character and everything. We had like cameos from Kevin Hart and Aziz Ansari. We had Rihanna in this, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Mindy Kaling, unfortunately, was in this. There are definitely some people in this who are unfortunately problematic, but gotta remember the year this came out and everything. 2013 was a different time, and a lot of problematic people weren't known as being problematic at that time. But yeah, it's having the fictionalized and exaggerated versions of themselves added to a lot of the comedy. Them like mocking themselves and all the jokes about like who they are and everything, and even just Hollywood in general. There's a lot of humor that's mocking and making fun of Hollywood and actors and all in general, and I can dig that. I can dig a movie that is just self-deprecating and shows that, yeah, Hollywood's not all that it's cracked up to be. A lot of people in Hollywood can be pretty terrible sometimes, and a lot of people just have a lot of issues. It's not all fairy tales and rainbows and sunshine. And obviously, there's a lot of jokes of like what it takes to be a good person and all near the end and everything. Like it obviously there's a lot of simplistic views on morality and all, but it's done again. It's done in a very entertaining, fun way. A lot of ridiculousness, a lot of insanity. And there were a lot of things that actually surprised me too. Like even besides just the revelation that it was Revelation. You know, outside of even that, it's like I actually didn't guess that that James Franco had a secret stash of food and all. That actually caught me off guard. Because it's like I there was the scene where he gave Seth Rogen the cracker, right? I thought it was drugs. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't think it was an actual cracker. I thought like the term cracker was being used as a like a slang term or something. I thought he gave him drugs. Like ones that they didn't know about ahead of time. Like something like special. You know what I mean? I thought it was like I thought they were using a slang term for some drug. I didn't know it was just like an actual random ass cracker. And so I had no idea. I very much did not expect the possession thing at all. Hell, when the scene first happened with Jonah Hill being raped by the demon, I honestly thought it was a dream. Just the way it was set up and presented made it unclear if it really happened. I thought it was a dream. But then you see the marks on his arms and everything a little bit after, and it's like, oh, wait, it's not a dream then? But then it's like nothing's happening, so it's like, what was the point of it then? And then he ends up being possessed, and it's like, oh, okay. I get it now. I am kind of wondering, though, how did that demon get into the house? How did it get in, and why is the only thing it did was rape to possess Jonah Hill? Like, I presume that the demon was, like, within him from that point. Obviously, jokes intended there. But, so it didn't just leave again after, but all it didn't kill anyone, like the other demons were trying to do. It just went in there just to do that? Okay. Again, how did it get in there, too? We never actually saw that. It's suddenly there at one point. There's... Like I said, there's a lot of things that are kind of unanswered here. The funny thing is, I think that this movie could be not remade, but kind of have a spin-off of it. Like, imagine, like, another movie taking place at the same time in the same world and everything, but a completely different cast of celebrities doing kind of the same stuff, but different as well. And their experiences during this biblical apocalypse. They could easily make another film on this. Same kind of thing, just different actors, different situations, different scenarios, different circumstances and deaths and whatnot. They could easily do so much more with this concept. This came out, though, a decade ago. So I don't think there's really plans for anything more. Now, from what I'm seeing here, this movie did pretty well. It made a net profit of $50 million, which is pretty good. And it was released alongside Man of Steel as well. So that's actually pretty impressive that it made a pretty notable net profit when released alongside a big superhero film. Even if Man of Steel wasn't that well received. It also has, and as always, take it with a grain of salt, an approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes of 83% based on 228 reviews with an average rating of 7.1 out of 10. The critical consensus reads, energetic, self-deprecating performances and enough guffaw-inducing humor make up for the flaws in This Is the End's loosely written script. So, obviously, I'm not seeing, like, it doesn't tell me on here what the flaws in the writing were, but honestly, I think the writing was one of the sharper points, and I think a lot of the humor, a lot of the especially stoner and sexual humor that you have in this is actually the weakest points of the film. Again, I feel the movie was at its best when it was focusing on the apocalypse stuff. Let's see here. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly gave the film a letter grade of A, I presume as being a really high grade, and said you could sit through a year's worth of Hollywood comedies and still not see anything that's genuinely knock your socks off audacious. But This Is the End truly is. It's the wildest screen comedy in a long time, and also the smartest. I would not say that. That's a little overkill. The most fearlessly inspired. I could give you that. And the snort out loud funniest. No, it's not the snort out loud funniest. I've seen a lot better. I've seen a lot better from animated films, like ones that are actually marketed towards children and everything. Like, again, a lot of the humor in this just didn't work for me. Brian D. Johnson of McLean's wrote, there could be worse ways to experience the apocalypse than with a party of stone celebrities at James Franco's house. I mean, yes, but also James Franco's house. Again, things happened after this movie. Things were revealed after this movie, in the years after this movie was released. For one thing, his epic art collection can be used to board up the cracking walls against demons and zombies. There weren't any zombies, it was just demons. That's the screwball scenario of This Is the End. The film unfolds as a profanely funny showbiz parody, but with perfect timing. It also sends up a genre that has recently gone viral at the multiplex, the Apoca blockbuster. Okay. Rick Groen of the Globe and Mail, however, gave the film 1.5 stars out of 5, comparing the film to an interminable wait for a canceled bus. Okay. And referring to the actors in the film as the lazy, the privileged, and the mirthless. Okay, here's something I'm interested in, though. Sequel. So when Goldberg was asked whether a sequel to the film was probable, it's definitely possible. Because of, again, this just sets up for the possibility for more. But he replied, if you asked me, I said there's a pretty good chance of a sequel. If you asked Seth Rogen, he'd say no. Okay, so I guess Seth Rogen doesn't want one? But Evan Goldberg could do something without Seth Rogen. And honestly, again, Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel and every other of the ones in here got their kind of end, except for, like, Emma Watson and, Danny McBride. I mean, he's still out there being a cannibal. But it's like, you could easily follow a completely different set of characters. Easily. It doesn't have to be the same characters. In fact, it wouldn't make sense for it to be the same characters. In June 2013, Goldberg revealed some ideas for a sequel, in which the apocalypse occurs at the premiere of the first film. So even more of a meta joke there. Seth's a cokehead in this version. Michael Cera is a calm dude with a boyfriend. Rihanna and the Backstreet Boys are back, Goldberg stated in an interview. We have a lot of ideas. A Heaven and Hell, for example, and a Garden of Eden version where Danny McBride is Adam. Despite this, Goldberg has also said that it would be difficult to recreate the casting conditions from the first film due to different schedules, believing them to be a stroke of luck, by saying, I honestly don't know if we could get the guys together again. In May 2014, Rogen posted an update on Twitter about a potential sequel, saying, I don't think we'll make a sequel to This Is the End, but if we did, it would be called, No, This Is the End. Okay. And apparently there's a 3D maze at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood in 2015 for this. Okay. So it looks like there's not going to be a sequel. It looks like that it's pretty confirmed, I would say, especially now being a decade later. But again, it seems like the problem is that they were only looking at like how they would do a sequel or a pseudo sequel meta commentary on the first film by bringing in just the same actors. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. Like I said, completely different actors. Bring in completely different set, except maybe have again, the ones that survived or possibly survived come back. Like Danny McBride and Channing Tatum could come back. You could bring back Emma Watson. But like otherwise, like you could have a completely different cast. bring in a lot more actors who are more culturally relevant today. A lot more interesting ones who could bring in like characters like you could bring in Dave Bautista, you could bring in Chris Evans, you could bring in God, what is her name? Anya Taylor-Joy. Just a lot of different like actors like from nowadays who have gotten bigger, and it doesn't have to be the same cast. A sequel with the same cast would not work because again, if you tried to have it like be a follow-up, it couldn't work because of how this ended. And if you tried to just do some kind of big meta commentary, it's like it'd be too much. It's like it'd be too much to try and do a meta commentary on what is already a meta commentary. It's like you can't do that and make it work properly. So yeah, I think they were just looking at it the wrong way. But I guess it's not going to happen anyways at this point. So, like, they've moved on to a lot of other stuff by this point. Movies that have come out after this, like they did Sausage Party. Just recently having come out the new TMNT movie, which is actually getting a lot of big love and everything. Yeah, they've done a lot of movies. They're working on like The Boys and stuff. Goldberg is specifically working on Gen V, which is coming out this year. It's like, yeah. The Interview actually came after this one, apparently. So they're not doing a sequel to this. It's not happening. But yeah, out of the stoner comedies I've seen, and honestly, probably out of Seth Rogen's movies that I've seen, this is probably the best. It just worked in a lot of ways. It was at its best when it was focusing on the apocalyptic stuff. It had some great demon designs, had some just some good humor, but mostly it was the apocalypse and, you know, fear-based stuff, and when they were like freaking out and having a hard time surviving. That was the best stuff in this, easily. The stoner and sexual comedy was the weakest parts of this movie, and did bring it down from being even better than it could be. But hey, still a good movie, and I'd love to hear what you think. So tell me in the comments below, what are your thoughts on This Is the End? That being said, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.